So far I have showed you how we can select an object and then via the 3D print export our CAD model into STL and then import that model into Blender so we can better texture and render it. The process is pretty doable, works, but the problem is we end up with a triangulated mesh. That is, for example, why in previous videos I then went to faces and set trees to quads. And let's do this for a second. And that cleans up the mesh a little bit, but I still have a lot of irregularities and way too much data here for rendering. Now STL is good for 3D printing, not necessarily the greatest for rendering. So let me show you what else we do. We're actually going to use Moments of Inspiration, which is a lightweight NURBS modeler based on the Rhino toolset. This program is pretty cheap. It's very fast. It's actually meant for low-end computers, and the screen refresh rate in the software is pretty fantastic. And actually, it has basically the best NURBS to polygon measure I ever saw. We have this one installed on the computers. If you want to download it at home, you can go and download a trial, for example. That's the one I'm going to use for a moment. And here I have MOI. That's the interface. And if I want to import something, I want to save actually my table as a step file, or IGES, doesn't matter. I use step. So from Fusion, I save it as step. Step is also kind of like a very common file format to move NURBS geometry between different programs. Let's go to MOI, import. There's my table, open. Okay, there it is. And see the interface, you have all those move commands and zoom commands here. Just for, so you have some ideas about drawing solids and curves. Here you have join, separate, trim, extend, show points. Kind of like what you have in alias as well. Booleans, fillet, offset, planar. So you see, this all should be pretty familiar. But what we're going to do is we're going to export this one. And we go to File, Export. We have this object selected, and then I call this one Table. And instead of Open NURBS, I would like to select Wavefront, OBJ. That's also in general the format you really want to work with. And take a look when I zoom in at this mesh. Everything is either quads or actually n-gons. N-gons means it's a polygon with more than 4 sides. So you see the top part is one big face, and all those sides are nicely rectangles. Here you have something with angle, and there actually you can specify at what angle a surface should be broken. See, this bends, so the software has to break it into more segments. And you see with a higher number, I get more breaks. But also my mesh gets a little bit denser. So there are different settings. So you see, for example, here this way, I also divide like other parts, subdivide it more, or I can simply keep this one empty. Now you see those those horizontal lines are just one face. And let's see what happens if we type something in here. That will avoid smaller than 1. I think it will still be a problem. What about 0.1? Now you see actually this way this remains, but this is very dense, so maybe there, this way I can loosen this a little bit. So there you see the difference. And the settings here are really, how could I say that? There's not a specific number I can tell you what you have to use, because it's really based on your object and how clean you want to mesh. If you show something really far, you can get away with a higher angle. If, for example, you get very close and you want to have nice curves, then maybe you need something that's finer. So for example, here in this case now, I might actually type this one in. Oh, didn't really do anything. 0.5. 0.05. Okay, better. Yeah. Okay. Then click OK, and it exported now the OBJ. Let's go to Blender, import, now this time OBJ. There's my table file, and then scale.001. Oh, maybe I scaled it a little bit too big. Okay. Let's see actually what scale factor I might have to use when I bring this one in from MOI. And oh, here it has to be dot point one, dot point one, dot 0.1. There. Okay. Good. Let's move this one maybe to the side. There's some material on it. I would like to delete it. And let's take a look at it. And there you can see now how nice and clean this mesh is. Contrast to here, we have so many more triangles, so many points. And the advantage of this is, first, it's less data. And in case you have to manipulate it a little bit, you have less material really you need to take care of. Also because the mesh is cleaner, texturing and rendering will have less chance of any artifacts. The advantage of using OBJ is also that it natively comes with the UV unwrapping. Unfortunately, MOI can actually take the NURBS UV coordinates and basically puts that into the polygon mesh. So if I select my MOI model, click A, there you see everything is UV unwrapped. If I click my STL Fusion import, nothing is unwrapped. If I now set this one to the material preview, it doesn't look too bad. Obviously, the Fusion one doesn't really have any UV coordinates, so no software will be able to project that texture correctly over the polygon mesh yet. And MOI actually wrote that UV map for us, but the problem, as you can see, is if we zoom in, we start seeing that maybe some of the scale issues are off. And the main problem here is simply all these parts are unwrapped as kind of like individual islands, and they have different sizes. So for example, if I go into edit mode, face, and select this face, you see how big actually this rectangular format is. So it fills actually the complete UV rectangular space, but the piece is actually more taller and not as wide. And even more evident why we have a scale issue is when we click this face, you see that this is even more narrow and it's completely a square. Okay, so this doesn't really work as good. Also, you only have to UV unwrap really what you need to texture with something like a wood material or a fabric material or something similar. When you do not need a texture to be projected over something, then you do not need to UV unwrap it. So if you have plastic, for example, you don't really need to do that. Or glass or steel, as long as you don't have a very specific like brush pattern on it or so. Okay, so how do we now fix this problem? Well, I can go into edit mode, press A and A, select everything, press U, or simply inside the tool palette, go to Unwrap, and then I select Smart UV Projection. Click OK. And let's take a look at the result. You see actually that all those parts are unwrapped as individual islands, but it seems like the scale is pretty much intact. So that's actually good. So let's zoom in. So now there you can see that the wood pattern everywhere seems to have the right scale, but there's still a lot of gaps or transitional problems. And that one we can actually really easy fix. And that's one of the main reasons why, for example, meshing through MOI is an advantage, because you see here when I select this top face, it's just one face basically that describes this geometry. So inside my UV editor, I have less work to do. Now let me show you one simple trick. So I have more control about how to, inside the UV editor, move my my UV faces. I'm going to create a new material inside the UV editor, and then I select UV grid and click, maybe let's call this one first, UV test image. Okay, click OK there. And you don't really see anything here, so inside there we can select UV test image. So you see there's a very simple and repetitive pattern which we can use as a helper to orient ourselves a little bit. So I go into top view, and I'm going to select maybe all those faces. I just want to see where they're positioned, and this face. Okay, good. So now here, for example, with this bigger face, I can see I have kind of like a gray rectangle and a green plus. So my question is this that corner? Yeah, that's that corner. And I think then this point is this corner here. Yep. Okay, so this is my top view. Essentially, I would like this one to be rotated 180 degrees. So what I see then up here is also what I have up in my editor. Okay, so that, for example, makes life a lot easier for me. Good. So then next step, let's select all those and see where they are. And the editor, plus 7, and let's take a look. So what's this point? Oh, that's interesting. Okay, there. So that seems to, yep. Okay, so if I see this correct, this point up here is actually right there. So the rotation is maybe correct. Okay, perfect. Let's rotate my view a little bit. This might be really confusing for the first time you do it. Just follow the steps I'm doing. It will be actually then pretty simple. So where do I start seeing this yellow plus? That's actually there. That means this part might have to be rotated. Yeah, so you know, I'm going to use this green plus as a marker. The plus is somewhere there. And then this one now I have to rotate 180 degrees. See there, I start lining those parts up. Okay, so, but I want to have really perfect positioning. So what I'm going to do is I set my snapping from increment simply to vertex. And then here I can zoom in, press G, hold my control key and snap to this point. There. Let's select this face. A, select all these points. G, move this one over. G, and then control click. Let's zoom in and look at that. Zoop. Nice transition. Okay. Let's see where this one leg geometry is. Oh, it's up there. Let's move it in. Let's rotate it 90 degrees. Let's move it up and then see if the thing actually fits. It does not, so I might have to rotate it at 180 degrees. And there it is. Perfect. Okay, let's do this one more time. So in addition now, I'm going to select these faces. Whoops. So that actually has to go to down there. So what do we have here? Oh, where's my red plus? Red plus is there. Okay, so this is actually the lower part. It feels like this one has to be maybe rotated 180. So this is my lower left corner. That's my lower left corner. Okay, let's take a look at this one. So I think this one has to be rotated 180 as well. This is my lower right. There's my upper right. Okay, so then this one, control click to there. G, control click there. Let's take a look. You see, zip, it flows nicely. Click on this bigger rectangle. And I currently match them minus 90. Maybe should work. I match them in a way so that my UVs perfectly sit on each other. And for example, I would do this amount of work mainly only on the surfaces also I see. You don't really have to, for example, do everything from below. What you don't see and what you're not going to render, do not spend any time on it. Otherwise, it would be a waste of time. Okay, so wasn't too bad. So let's take a look at maybe the rest. So there you see, this way we were quickly able to fix that problem. I'm not going to do the other parts right now because I did this one twice, so you could simply replicate that on yourself. So here I put back my wood texture, and if I zoom in, looks pretty good. Nice transition. The only problem are the sides and the fillets, and they're going to be really a major pain to solve. In general, the problem is I built this table basically assembled, but in real life this would be flat wood and then with all the veneers, and it would be pressed into the shape. So also every CAD application will have an issue to really texture this one correctly, so at the side that the wood material flows down perfectly. So if I would, for example, for this make a computer model for rendering, I would build this one really flat and then actually texture it and then later bend these legs with a deformation down into the shape I need. So I will have an easier process. But I will show maybe some other options we can try to do in our beginning stage, which maybe strike a nice balance between cleanness and accuracy and also the time spent. So you see I have all these faces selected, and if I press U and click unwrap, I get all the stuff here, so not really good. What about if I press Smart UV Project? I get something like this. Forms are pretty good, but the problem is now I have so many different elements which I would have to move and rotate correctly and then put them next to each other. That's going to be quite a task. Totally doable. It's not really too much to do, but honestly, I don't really want to do this right now. And there's a small shortcut we could do, which gives us nearly the same result with just one click. So you see I'm inside an orthographic view to my table sites, and then I can select project from view. So this view of how I see all those faces is projected into my UV mesh. But actually there's a distortion happening right now. So let's do this one more time. UV from view. Oh, interesting. That shouldn't really be this way. Okay, well, not a big deal. Because what I can do simply now is select A, S, and then, for example, Z, no, Y, and scale it kind of like into the proportion it has to be. So it feels like it's still a little bit too tall. Maybe like this. Okay. Let's maybe go back to, whoops, the material. Let's zoom in a little bit. And now it doesn't look too bad. You see it's nice and clean. It strikes a balance between all these fillets, and the side faces are nicely textured and have a transition, and obviously we have a hard edge here. So there's not much we can do about it. But let's make sure that our size is correct, and there we see actually the problem. The thing is way too small. So now I can simply position it somewhere and then scale this one till, for example, the mid straight line is pretty close to how it should be. There. Yeah, okay. Let's take a look. And there you see now the pattern fits better. So that's one really quick way how to do it. This won't actually work here where this is rounded, simply because I can show you what's going to happen. So let's select all those faces here, and you see I simply select the others at the same time, and let's go to here and say unwrap from view. So you see that actually the faces I'm looking perpendicular to, I can see they're textured, but the faces which were tangent, they look totally wrong. So that doesn't really work. So in this case, I think it might be interesting to show you an alternative process, which actually might make this a little bit easier. And what we're going to do is all those edge roundings, which are kind of like surface treatments or details, I'm going to deactivate in Fusion and only bring back the box model, and then actually round those edges with the fillet tool in Blender for my rendering. So let's go to Fusion. Here are those fillets. So actually that fillet, and what about this? What does this fillet do? Oh, no, just, okay, you deactivate, so we suppress it. Okay, so this other fillet, that one I actually would like to keep because that creates this rounding, but just this hard edge, that one I would like to maintain. So export, step, and maybe let's call this one table 2. And let's go back to MOI, open, discard table 2. There it is. And you can select the object, file, export, and let's say obj table 2, save. Let's take a look. This one I can set to 0 now. Okay. Just for the moment, I was just curious, how will this look with trees and quads? Ooh, okay, not good. So keep n-gons. Okay. Hold on 1 second. I would like to take a look at this corner to see how many faces I have there. Yeah, that seems to be okay. Maybe 8 or 15. Let's go with 15. Click OK. Then back to Blender. Go to import obj, table 2. You also see the file difference. The first table is 1.2 megabytes. The second table is 64 kilobytes. So the fillets are pretty data heavy. Scale .01, and let's give this one also a nice material. Okay. So you see there are no sharp edges or anything. Let's go into the edit mode. But also here you see we have this problem. But now let's go to unwrap and see what we get. Interesting results. Okay, not useful. But let's try this one actually. So, oh, those are individual faces. Oh, that's nifty. Okay, good. So let's select this face, and I'm hiding it right now. And then I'm selecting all those side faces here as well. There and there. And press H to hide. And the main reason is you see now, hold on 1 second. Those faces down here I really don't like. So those I'm going to remove, delete face. So by having hidden those side faces, if you can do it, I can now actually go, for example, to a top view and, for example, select this one, and let's say press L. So, okay, click this one, press L, and there actually I see what's only linked together. So what I'm going to do is the following. I simply select all those together, zip, there, and zip. And let's see, when I press U and unwrap, no, not together. But these parts are actually not fused together. So I'm going to my tools and say remove doubles, or that's, for example, weld the surfaces together. 16 points removed. Press U, unwrap. And let's take a look at this. Not bad. Unfortunately, this is useless. So this trick didn't really work. Let's see what Smart UV project is going to do. Okay, I guess then we have to do the same here, unfortunately. But I see something else here. Little time saver. You see those faces actually are a little bit less complex. There. So now I have only to rotate them and attach them to the correct parts. I'm going to do this for the moment. So I'm going to pause my video, and then when I have this one done, I will be back. So here I have my top face, or all the top surfaces, positioned together. And now I have to take care of, for example, this face. So let me select it there. Let's see where this one is. There. There. Okay, there, for example, I can see the scale issue I have. So I think the main problem is that probably this one is a little bit too big. So I'm simply scaling this one down a notch. And scale this one maybe a little bit more aggressively. Overlay it. So now I can scale this one back up. Till, for example, it starts looking good. Okay, fine. So let's take a look maybe how this one might feel with a wood material over it. Not too bad, not too shabby. Here I have some problems. So let me see what maybe I can do to solve that annoying problem. So there I have my one surface. So this one here definitely I have to rotate minus 90. Oh, that's too much. Actually, I have to rotate it till maybe the bottom line here feels horizontally. I would say plus minus. And then I have this one here, rotate 90 for sure. And I want those beauties also be somewhere. Oh, there. So UV test image. Let's see where is what. So I'm going to use my green plus here again as a helper. So rotate 180. Rotate 180. Yeah, there you see now the plus, the green plus starts to line up. Okay. Maybe rotate 90. And let's move this one to here. Let's put this one to this green thing. Press L on this part. G. Oh, perfect. Okay. And L on this one. Move it over. There you can see where the blue plus would be, so that's the correct orientation. Oh, this one is too tall, so I alt click onto this edge. You see it selects only the lower points, G and Y. Control click and snap it to the correct height. Okay, now this part is slightly rotated incorrectly. So here I just maybe I do this. Click this point, cursor to selected, A, L, switch to 3D cursor. So I'm rotating around my 3D cursor up there. Control, click there. And maybe move this one in a little bit to somewhere. Let's go back to the UV. Let's take a look and ta-da! Much, much better. You see? So that looked actually pretty good. So currently all those faces are separate, which makes this movement very easy, but that's not really what I want. So AA till I have everything selected, and then I say under tools, remove doubles. So they're now fused together. The main reason for that is the following. I switch to edge mode, and then let's see if I can select those edges. So Shift and Alt to select a loop. Yep. No. Okay, here I just have to deselect this edge. And there's a little offender. So I'm Alt clicking those edges, and the main reason for that is at one point then I will tell the software like in Fusion, along those edges, please round my surface. Okay, looks pretty good. So I press N, I go to bevel weight, and I set this one maybe to 1. And I press A and bevel. There you see what's selected. Okay, so shift spacebar. Let's move this one down. Go to modifier. This one is shaded smooth. So let's make a bevel. And now I go to weight. Maybe 5 millimeters. And nothing really works. And that's very simple to explain why. Simply because this object has a scale factor. So I have to apply the scale factor right now. Apply scale, zip, and shade flat. And there we see, for example, the bevel. So if I say this one 2 millimeters, there it's smaller. Maybe instead of chamfering, make it a fillet. So nice and round. There. Okay. Now we can go back to shade smooth and actually then pump in an edge split effect. Maybe for the edge splits we can change when it does it. Actually splits it there. I don't want that. So sharp edges. Oops, that was it. 30. Let's see, it doesn't really do much right now. So I play with the slider a little bit. Sharp. Oh, those are marked as sharp. That's the reason why. So here, AA, Control E, and mark clear as sharp. So let's see how this one looks now. 30. There, so now there I can adjust the radius still. There. Okay. So that's nice. You can see how actually nicely the textures are flowing over the surfaces. Also the corner looks pretty good. And that's simply due because I started with a really very basic and simple mesh. And then thankfully, because Blender has those interactive modifiers, in Fusion I can simply turn off the fillet, import really the boxy model, and then in Blender recreate the fillet effect just for the edge rounding. Edge roundings in general are difficult when you work with something like wood or so, because it's really difficult in computer graphics to simulate how you would work with real wood. In reality, we would have a volume and we would cut, sand, route edges, etc. And in computer graphics, we can try to simulate that by gluing wood textures over it, which is not really at a level that we get exactly the same result. So you have to do, to a certain level, just simply accept a sacrifice or compromise. And for me, I might have to simply recreate the crease, not the crease, the weight, the bevel, and then add a bevel modifier, which is an extra step. However, in contrast to before, you can see I have a much thinner or slimmer model. So for me, adjusting the UV mapping is much faster, more productive, more control. So this is a really easy to accept extra step to do. Because the end result is actually the same. You won't see in the rendering if there is a difference.